Thank you so much, Kristen. Yeah, it's been really wonderful to be at the Tides Institute this past month and getting to know everybody and getting to use, fabric and things that people have been donating and dropping off has been really special. I'm gonna share my screen in 1 second to just show some images of a show that I have that's up right now, which gives kind of a good overview of my work, and then moving on into images of the work that I've made since being here at the Tides Institute. So I'm going to share my screen. Can everybody see? Can I get a thumbs up if you can see the screen? Chris, yeah, great, okay. Yeah, unfortunately, this is scrolled to the bottom, but let's see. Sorry, I'm just trying to have it go into full screen. Okay, so still good. Okay, this is a quilt that I made basically finished in January 2020, but that I started in the fall of 2019, and it's sort of the largest and basically was the first like large scale quilt that I had made using hand dyed silk. So this is all hand dyed silk. It's mostly, some pretty thin like habitat, which is a little difficult to work with. And so I've kind of moved on to using heavier weight silk. And I think, I don't know, I think a lot about these works as portals. And I think a lot about the act of quilting as kind of a metaphor for like piercing the veil between our reality and, and another reality or a potential future. And something that I was talking with somebody the other day about quilting as kind of a spiritual act, in terms of it feels very devotional to me. And I really like the fact that you can't uncut fabric, but you can piece it back together, and it's still, it can create, many pieces can create a unified whole, but they still, kind of bear the evidence of being cut or of being separate. So this is basically that other quilt at the back wall of the space. Also, this show is at BRIC, which is an arts organization in Brooklyn, and it's up until June 25th, if you'll be in New York between now and then. But basically, as you sort of turn around in the space and look back towards the door, I decided to make a double-sided quilt, which is not something that I had ever done, but it was at the beginning of the pandemic. I was really, I felt really anxious, as I think many people did. And I wanted to make something abstract, or I wanted to emphasize that idea of the quilts as portals by making something with an abstracted portal on one side and then with an image on the other side. And also the idea of it hanging in the middle of the room where you can walk around both sides, kind of emphasizing that image of the quilt itself as a portal. And then, this is like an abstracted kind of spiraling portal, but it also visually relates to like the floral sculpture that's in the front of the room. It's just a closer image of that sculpture, and it's the top of the sculpture is quilted hand-dyed velvet, and then it's stiffened with this heat moldable batting, which is, it's like a little bit of a nightmare to work with. I mean, it's basically plastic, but it holds, it holds that kind of cone shape and that like upper petal shape, and it's nice and stiff. And then the bottom of it is rug tufted, so it's basically a lot like rug hooking or punch needle. And that, it kind of has this like Trajan column sort of series of images going around it. And I wanted I think the next one is a detail. Yeah, so I wanted I wanted to kind of, I like the ways that in the silk quilts, the surface kind of becomes like a low relief with the stitching. And so I wanted to emphasize that with, using the batting to create this kind of like bubbling carnivorous flower. And then this is like a tighter image of the smaller quilt that's behind that sculpture. This one's done all in cotton. This is another all silk quilt of kind of this utopian landscape. And the next image is just a detail of that. So this one has, hand beading all over it. I think, I wanted something to keep my hands busy kind of early on in the pandemic when I was feeling really anxious. And so as you turn around in the space, you see on the right side, there's the other side of that double-sided quilt with the portal on the back. And then on the left side is a jacquard weaving that was made from a painting that I made and that I sent, a digital image of that painting to a mill out in California. And they, digitally wove this jacquard. And then there are these murals, creating kind of two columns that these branches are coming out of. This is, again, it's the other side of that portal quilt, and it's, again, it's done in all like hand-dyed silks, and the figures in it are friends of mine who I had posed for this image. There's a little detail of that. Just to get kind of an idea of the stitching, and it gets that nice kind of like puckering that happens with, lots of stitching very close together. And then this is just another image of the jacquard weaving, a little detail of that, and a little detail of the mural that's on the wall next to it. So yeah, I wanted to start getting into images of the work that I've been doing at the Tides Institute. This was a quilt. So everything that I'm doing here, it's all quilt tops. I haven't, I didn't bring a sewing machine that can, do the free motion quilting that I normally do. So I just wanted to make mostly quilt tops. And this one, and also I've been working with almost exclusively with fabric that people have been dropping off to me. So I received kind of a lot of plaid, and I wanted to alter and dye and bleach some of that plaid to kind of to create a quilt with it. So this is one of the first things I did when I got here. And then this is a quilt top that's done all with, again, fabric that people have been dropping off. Like even those top two sections are t-shirts that I pieced together. And this is the landscape that this is sort of drawing from, is Dog Island. That's, kind of walking distance from the studio. Is like, that's really, the land and the island are separate when it's high tide, but then they're connected when it's low tide. And this is kind of like a goddess figure, like looking into a tide pool. And we've been thinking about the changing light in the landscape at different times of day, and kind of like making a fun problem for myself of taking reference images and trying to compare them to the colors of fabric that I have that people have, donated to try to match those colors from different times of day. And then also just thinking about this kind of like hypnotic, like this hypnotic kind of draw that the water has, that I've kind of sensed as I, walk around the island and like catching little glimpses of the water and trying to find, areas that I can walk through without walking through somebody's yard, to like try to just, to look at the ocean, at the water as it's, sort of changing throughout the day and as the tides are raising and lowering. This is a cyanotype that I did with the help of a friend of mine who came to visit me. In the next image, you'll see kind of what the process for this is, but it's basically, photochemicals that are put onto fabric, in this case, cotton. And then I used kind of a bunch of found materials and also cut paper to create these two figures. And and basically, you know, strewed with the photochemicals, you lay things on top, and then whatever gets exposed to the UV light of the sun turns blue, you know, some varying shade of blue depending on how much light is being blocked by the objects. Oh, this is just a little detail of, you know, you can just get a lot of detail on them. This is like a jug handle piece of sea glass that I got from one of the beaches here. So this is just to give you an idea of what it looks like in process. It's kind of this, it turns this like greenish bronze color, and then that's a smaller print that you'll see in the next image. And then, you know, with all the objects laid on top of it. And actually Tara helped me with this one, which was really wonderful. So yeah, so this is how that print came out. And you can sort of see there's like a fun thing that happens, and that I'm kind of figuring out with this between, you know, white, like medium weight white paper versus black paper versus, you know, how much light each of them block off. And this is a second, you know, they're the same size. It's kind of like a diptych of these two. Oh, and these are silk rather than cotton also, which it's interesting. You can see that there's like a color difference, and there's yeah, I don't know, there's like an interesting effect that happens. And then I wanted to close with something that it's behind me right now, but that a quilt top that I just finished like an hour and a half ago. That's it's really big. I mean, it's like almost 6 feet in diameter. That's all, again, all done with fabric that people have dropped off, some of which I did some over dyeing on, like the rock, both colors of the rock were done with like this beige, basically over dyeing this cotton beige bed sheet that somebody dropped off. And again, thinking about, you know, a place like Split Rock as being this kind of this very charged place, and also I think Sunset as like a very I don't know, I think of like visually Sunset here feels really like a thin, I don't know, like a thin, a time where the sort of the veil between like our world and like another possible world feels very thin to me. And then specifically Split Rock as also being a place that feels kind of, that feels like a space for sort of like passage or portal, you know, sort of between worlds. Yeah, and I'm really excited about this one. It should be in a show in LA in July, I think, if I can finish quilting it by then. But yeah, that's the end of images. I can stop sharing my screen. And yeah, thank you all so much for having me here. And yeah, this has been really wonderful being at the Tides Institute. And thank you, Kristen and Hugh and everybody for being so incredibly supportive during this whole process.
Questions until the end for those of you who came in late. You're welcome to use the chat if you want to. And then we'll turn it right over to Tara. And then at the very end, everyone can ask questions or see if people have other remarks to share, thoughts about what's been going on. So Tara.
Hello, everyone. It's been a pleasure to be here in Itsport. I'm really sad that I have to leave. So if anyone knows of a place that I can stay, please tell me. I would love to rent a place. Moving on to my projects. My work is mostly on Google Maps. Sorry, I have to figure out some screenshot. Okay. So to give a little bit of my art background, I've been working on newspapers and social media platforms, and I have been trying to depict how social media platforms and the media have manipulated our perception of the world. So these are some of my works by transforming the image and text of some of the content of the newspaper. I try to show how easily we could be manipulated. So that's how my work is started, and then I shifted from the newspaper to the cyberspace. So I started to work on Google Maps, and by writing my daily activities and some poetry and uploading some images, again transformed images on Google Maps. And then I realized that a lot of my writings and images were deleted and reported. So my fight started with Google Maps and my research to realize what are how they operate to eliminate my content. And I started a project specifically on F train line in New York by uploading photos that I collected from other users' reviews and manipulate them again and put them back on the platform. I just show you some of my images. And to avoid to be reported and eliminated from the platform, I tried to do it as subtle as I could do. So at first glance, you can't see what I have done. I mean, this one is very obvious, but then you can realize, but this is a good example. You can see it at first what I transformed, and then after a few seconds, you see what has changed. This is another example. I have changed some text also. And these are all uploaded on Google Maps review section. And so this is one example of my work. And just to show you how Google Maps cover, another example, how covers different parts of world based on geopolitical relation between the US, where these big companies are reside, like in Silicon Valley mostly. So that's why the relationship between the US and other countries affects how Google Maps coverage different countries. So I'm just gonna show you how it works by taking this little guy. So this is the globe. This little guy over the map. All the blue lines you can see is the coverage of Google Maps review. As you can see, a lot of people have not been covered. And as I did the research, I realized that, for example, Iran, which is my country, it only has a few dots that are done individually by people who took photos. It has nothing to do with Google Street View, and everything after this border has not been covered by the car. Another example is Israel. I go closer. So it got some a good coverage by the Google Street View car in like places like Tel Aviv. And if we go closer, we see Gaza Strip. This is the border. And you can see that the car again haven't entered this area. And those little dots again are done individually by individuals. And other countries like, you know, Venezuela, which doesn't have a good relationship, political relationship with the US again. So in the Europe, there's something that worth mentioning. In Europe, you see all the places are covered except for Germany, and it has a lot to do with the psychological, cyber psychological, and social relationship, and again politics and history of background of Germany. People are very private and sensitive about their personal life. So, and Germany is in general suspicious about those big companies like Google. So privacy is very important for them. So this place stands out from all the other places. So that was just some boring facts. And now I get to eSport. So this is eSport. As you can see, we got a good coverage of almost all the streets. And this is the fisherman statue. Let's take a look. So the first time, and something that caught my attention, which I had never encountered before, was that the first time and the last time that this place was, I mean, the Google Street View passed through the city was 2009, 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago. And a lot of things have changed since then. Like as you can see, the mermaid which is here, I can see it from my studio, doesn't even exist in this picture. And if we go closer, you see how pixelated picture is. You can basically don't see the face of the fisherman, which is very charismatic. And yes, I hovered over the city to see what's going on. And the question came up to my mind, why eSport hasn't gotten this coverage only once, in opposed to other places like New York. This is a bit boring, but for example, I show you down. Okay, this is a place, the coffee shop that I constantly go to in New York. And sorry, that's the wrong place. Stone fruit. Okay, sorry, I can't find it right now. But to just give you an idea, it has been updated almost every year. And a lot of things have changed. If you go and check in other cities, you see the gradual change that they have. And this is something that the sport has been deprived of. For example, there's a pharmacy here that was dislocated a few years ago. And Google Maps here, 2009, shows a laundromat instead of the pharmacy, and it has caused a lot of problems that when I talk to people, and they say that tourists, I mean, local people know exactly where everything is, and they give you direction, but outsiders, especially tourists, they're dependent on the map, and they don't trust, verbal conversation and directions. So they go to Google Maps and they cannot find a place. And that's a big problem. So back to my project. My project is about, I collected words and letters from Google Maps to make these this textbook, which I would call it a selection of poems. So I started with fisherman status. As you can see, the words that I highlighted made the poem basically that is here. So, and these are all the reviews that I collected from the Google reviews. If you go there, you can see them. And again, I uploaded the result on the reviews. Sorry, I want to check the time. And these are the pictures. You can see how pixelated they are and the quality. This is Motel East, and with all the reviews, again, I highlighted the words and letters I picked and collected to write my poems. I'm gonna read one of them or a few of them. Stay, a room, a view, stay. I want to hear, see you next time I'm here. Minute to minute, east to east. The world is a room, AC, a fan, some air, refrigerator, microwave, Wi-Fi and signal everywhere. Stay. And I chose one of the words that is related to my personal life and found the definition on dictionary and put it on the note. And these are again the pictures that I found on Google. You can see they are very low quality and pixelated, which represents again the coverage of Google Maps of the city. I think you all know this place. The summer spreads again, an impossible historic feel. Family, friends, a nest of picturesque hopes. The meal that time forget. I leave. Nah, will it ever be left behind? An outstanding bus stopped. I must. Some details from the banner in front of the place. So I collected almost all the places reviews of a sport. So this is almost 70 pages of a textbook that I think, if I'm not wrong, Kristen, you can upload it on the website for some view if people are interested. Another thing that I did, and I freaked out a lot of people with that, was that I wore this green suit to make myself invisible. One of the things that I believe is happening in cyberspace is that we are becoming smaller and smaller, and the conversation and the language is changing and transforming to images and emojis and very short slangs, and the verbal conversation, face-to-face conversation is almost fading, and we are as social being becoming invisible. So as a tourist in sport, I try to represent this invisibility with my project that I'm gonna play for you. So this was my street, and it wholly covers my body and my face, and that's the reason why I freaked out some people. And I'm sorry about that if anyone that I freaked out is here. Okay, here we go. Thank you so much.